what's up guys? This is Church of Caboose, and this video is going to be my thoughts on the Deep Stone Crypt raid. I've been working on a guide, trying to get footage and stuff together, and of course I've started seeing what has become the hot button topic across the community, which is the Deep Stone Crypt raid too easy or too hard? So I just figured I'd take a little break from figuring out all this stuff for the guides for this raid and share with y'all my experience. Now keep in mind, my perspective comes from a day one attempt perspective, as well as from a guy who now has at least 3 clears as the time I'm recording this, and most likely will have 15 or so by the end of the week. So that should kind of, give a little bit of preface to my experience within this raid. It's not like I tried it once, either failed or succeeded, and I'm basing my opinion off of that. I've also been trying to use LFG groups because maybe my particular raid team is a little busy, and so I have a fairly mixed bag of doing things with randoms and doing things with folks that I know fairly well, which I feel puts me in a decent position to share opinions on this. So we're going to split this up. To first is going to be why I could see people finding the raid to be too hard, why I could see people find the raid to be too easy, and then how numbers can be deceiving. So before we get on into it, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to see guides. I'm working on graphics and visuals. Thank you, Crazy Corgi Queen, for all of that. I have not seen any guides use those yet, and it can be really confusing without having some sort of a visual, so I think you will really appreciate the work she put in to help me out with these visuals, and so stay tuned for all of that. If you would like help with things like getting raid clears and whatever else inside of Destiny, we do have a eventual Discord server for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and you can be in our clan, or just hop in there and let them know that you are subscribed to my channel, and we'll get you a role where you can still use our LFG capabilities. So first things first, why do I see people and understand why folks might think this raid is too hard? Well, we do have a big old slew of folks that don't normally raid, or maybe are just brand new to Destiny, that were able, or at least eligible, to try the day one raid, which would then put lots of salt in their undies with how I would imagine it went on that second encounter with the boss that rhymes with anthrax. Because, we had, the pandemic, so more folks are probably, it's more probable to have more folks at home and able to power up. We had about a week and a half between the seasons, or the Beyond Light starting, and then the raid release, which makes it easier to power up and be able to actually attempt said raid. And then we have it being the raid released on a Saturday, which is way more accessible to a lot more people, so it makes way more sense that a lot more folks would try that perhaps don't normally raid a ton, because experience does help. The more you do things like raiding and solo dungeons and challenging yourself, the more ease you would find with a brand new raid. And so if you haven't done a whole lot of that, I could see why any raid really would be deemed really difficult, while others might find it to be, I guess in this case, easy. But the main deal is this raid is rather unique, and that you can't just do nothing through the whole raid. Like in Last Wish, we had the ability for, if a player wasn't sure what to do, you most likely could just put them on ad clear and just be like, just kill a bunch of shit, we'll do everything else. By the end of the Deep Stone Crypt raid, that wasn't really much of an option. There's not a whole lot of an option for just telling someone, oh, just follow me, and being able to drag someone's happy butt through a raid clear without them knowing what to do. There's a lot more team involvement in that matter. So you could have folks that maybe do raids, but they were never required or needed to do things like mechanics. And so now they have to do mechanics, but they're not used to doing mechanics. And then if you're talking about the day one thing, you also have the factor of the capped power, and so survivability is rather difficult at that point. And then afterwards, how it is now, it's just everyone has to do something, especially by the time you get to the boss fight. Then with the boss fight, just like Crown of Sorrow, we have no set role. Like when I was doing things with LFG folks are really having a hard time understanding they couldn't know just their role they had to really reasonably understand at least 2 roles, so that way they could fill in if in case something got deactivated or got switched around or if someone just died. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, make sure you subscribe to my channel for these guides, because eventually I'll get around to getting a guide out for each individual encounter, and that whole sequence I mentioned about rotating roles will make more sense. But basically, you can't just be told you have roll X, and roll X is all you have to do the whole time. You have roll X, and then you might have a backup roll of Y, and then roll C needs some assistance, or a mechanic in the game happens that results in you needing to hop into like roll D. So you just have to know, be much more familiar with the whole encounter. You can't. It'd be a lot more difficult to get through without knowing more pieces than just your own, I guess, is really the point of what I'm trying to say. Which makes it more difficult. There's a bit of a personality and mental aptitude that goes into raids like this. Like, I happen to feel like I'm fairly ADD. My wife has a slightly different opinion about it. So the things for me that require rotating roles and like filling in gaps and going with the flow is just kind of natural. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot for me to be like, okay, so then this happens and this happens, but if this piece goes missing, then we gotta fill it in, and that's just kind of like a natural thing for me for some reason. So like, I'll find things of this nature to be very challenging. And then you've got other folks. My wife would potentially at first be this one, because she's only done raids with me where she only had 1 role, would be like, oh my god, I can't handle this, I need lots and lots and lots of practice, because she was only used to doing, hey, you have roll X and all you need to know is roll X. And that would make sense for why folks would find this to be particularly difficult as far as the raid goes. Then of course there's the lack of weapon loadouts, and perhaps if you're new to the game, you'd be less likely to know what weapons do the best damage, or you might not have the best exotics to pair with the best subclasses, things of that nature that just make doing things harder. Because if you can do a damage phase in 1 or 2 phases, that's going to be way more likely to be achievable over and over again than if you need to take 4 or 5 phases to try and accomplish a goal. There's just less room for error when you need that many rounds, and so that would then translate into something being more difficult. Now on the other side, when this raid to be too easy, which is, also kind of an interesting thing that personally kind of stings my gut just a little bit. So that in my team, we did the day 1 raid. We tried really hard. We got stuck at that second encounter. Like, for as best as I can tell, the majority of day 1 raiders got stuck at that anthrax guy. And the next day, it was shockingly easy. Like, we found, for us, it was not mechanics that made it hard. It was just the power cap. And we even had decent loadouts, and we had done things to try and do survivability, like bubbles and wells and protective light and whatnot. And it was still, we were still getting our butts wrecked by just like being looked at by the boss. So it was actually a little disheartening, because we're like, oh my gosh, this was for us a literal case of get good for the day 1 raid. And so I definitely see why folks would be like, this is too easy, because like, I've never before had a raid where the first day after contest mode I get a clear, much less 3 clears, much less now we're on reset and we're gearing up to, after I'm done recording this, to do at least 3 more runs because we want to, and we want to get that raid exotic, and then we're going to probably do like another 12 runs, maybe more. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised if we got to the end of this week and we as a group did together like 20 runs, because we're either helping people or we're going for triumphs, because that, like, to us this raid is really easy. But why is that? Well, some of it's mostly because we're experienced Destiny players. Like, all of us in this particular group, while not everyone has done as many raids as I have, which I by no means have an impressive amount as far as the Destiny community goes, but I do have somewhere in the neighborhood of around 180 total raid clears. And most of my team is similar to that, and a handful of them are like 50. The point is, we raid we raid a fair bit when compared to the average Destiny player in the community. Last statistics I had seen was something like 10% of the community does raids. I'm not sure if it was completes raids or even tries raids, but that was the number I remember seeing a while back before everything got vaulted. So we are more prone to being like used to that whole raid environment. There's pressure that goes into raids, and you get to the end, if you're all stressed out, it might get panicky, and then you throw it by accident. So like, we're less prone to that. So I can see experience being why this raid felt really easy. Then the other thing, I guess, really is just the gear. Like, if you have the right gear and you know how to use it, and you know how to pair it with stuff, we can like 1 and 2 phase things, like the deep stone, the security crypt, where you destroy the batteries, the first encounter. We can't get close to 1 phasing it. We haven't like sat down to figure out the best way to make it a 1 phase, but we've gotten really close, and then phase 2 is kind of like, if you die, whatever, like, doesn't matter, like, we're gonna finish it. So that really plays into, does something feel easy? So I guess then the last thing I want to kind of leave you guys with is whether you feel it's easy or you feel it's hard, the answer is yes. Like, your own experience is what really matters inside of a raid. The best example I can think to give you is, I know I'm going to be taking my wife in through this raid at some point. I don't know when. Maybe we'll make a video out of it. I have no idea, but I know I'm going to take her into the raid and she's going to get it clear. And I also know most likely she's going to feel like that was really tough for her, unless our team is able to like legit carry her through the whole thing and she doesn't have to do jack squat. But knowing my team, they're going to make her do stuff because they like to do that when folks are learning the raid. They don't just carry people. She's like, that was hard, whereas we're like, it's easy. And was it hard? Absolutely. For her, it was hard. Was it easy? Absolutely. For me, it was easy. So I guess that's how I would break that whole thing down. Lastly, because I did mention I would talk about numbers not being very a correct correlation to ease. It was mentioned that something like 5,000 to 6,000 teams got a day 1 completion, and therefore that means the raid was too easy. I would like to point out, again, there's a pandemic, so more people were probably able to play regardless of it being on a Saturday. More folks are probably more able to power up. We had a week and a half to power up, which just added on to folks being able to feel ready for a day 1 raid. And then the raid was on a Saturday, which meant it was much more accessible to more people to access and try to do this on a Saturday. And I personally think a lot of these big streamers are like, oh, this was too easy. Too many people have the emblem. Are maybe getting salty because perhaps they realized their podium that they thought was really small that they were on top of is perhaps not as small and holds more people. It's just they either don't stream, they don't do YouTube, or they just don't go, around shoving around, showing off for whatever the case may be. So hopefully we get to see more of them. Congrats to those that did get the world's first race. I'd never heard of Clan Luminous before, but now I have, and so has a lot of other people. So congrats to them on that world's first. Personally, I think it's kind of funny. Glad wasn't even like top 5, if I remember right, and he's kind of saying it was too easy. Maybe that's why he's all salty. I don't know. He's not the only one, though, that's a little salty about how easy the raid was in his own opinion. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I don't really usually do things where I just kind of sit down while I'm working and just kind of talk out my thoughts to share with you guys. Let me know down below, do you agree? Like, are you like the raid's too easy, the raid's too hard? I would love to know why either one of those is the case. I'm curious if one of my thoughts about why happens to line up with why you think it's either too hard or too easy. So let me know. And also, as always, put a corgi emoji down below if you guys made it this far. I'm always just curious to see how many people watch all the way to the end. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, join the Vengeful Discord server. We'll try to help you guys get some clears on this raid. I am Church of Caboose. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great week and happy grinding, y'all.